Blizzard Entertainment. Founded in 1991, it is one of the pillars of video games. One of the most influential companies in this hobby that we love so much. And like so many others, it's one that has seen itself decline. All the way from its humble beginnings to its now currently over 12,000 employees and being one of the three parts of Activision Blizzard King, which is also part of Xbox, which is like everything now. Blizzard finds itself in a very difficult situation where pretty much everything that they have ever done great is now being done better by other people. Except maybe World of Warcraft, I guess. The thing is, that's a pretty big difference compared to when Blizzard was the company that was innovating things, that was creating some of the games that we still cite today. They were a company that you could bet on to make a game that would probably have tremendous impact in the industry for years and years to come. And now they're a shell of their former selves. And while that is a very important part of the story, and we're going to talk about it, I like to keep my videos positive. There's a lot of negativity in the world in general, but especially in video games. Just this kind of strange undercurrent of video games are dying and stuff. But no, video games are getting better. That's the really fun part about this, that the decline of Blizzard only really exists by contrast. If there were nobody competing with Blizzard, if there were nobody trying to do what they have done before, they would just still be on top because they would be uncontested. But no, instead of that, today we get to talk about 3 games that are doing the things Blizzard did, but better. And we're going to dig deep into how they have taken the template set forth by Blizzard and evolved it, and what that means for Blizzard and the future of their games. So hi, I'm Mug. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new here, welcome back. It's really nice to see you. I'm really excited today to talk about the legacy of one of my favorite game companies ever, and about Marvel Rivals and Path of Exile 2, which you probably know, but also the Bazaar, a game that maybe you don't know that is equally impressive. You know how YouTube works at this point. Hit the like button if you enjoy the video. Helps it reach more people, because hopefully this is informative, it's entertaining, and might convince somebody to try a game that makes them happy and have a great time. So, timestamps for all of the different chapters are down below. Let's get into it. Now, one of the things I think we kind of forget at this point in time is just how impactful Blizzard has been to video games, both before it being Activision and after. Right from the start, when they made the death and return of Superman, they revolutionized the side-scroller. That was a very bad attempt at a joke, but that game is actually kind of okay. For many, many years, the RTS was basically synonymous with Blizzard, and while the genre still exists, and there's different types of RTS, the Blizzard type of RTS has never really been mimicked until now, where it's not one of the main pillars of this video, but there are a lot of games trying to imitate the success, specifically of StarCraft, which, you know, is kind of an evolution of Warcraft. The idea of Battle.net as a platform on which to play games, but also to play the multiplayer, was revolutionary. There is a world where Battle.net became Steam, since to a certain degree they kind of began with the same purpose of just giving a place where people could play the games, but more importantly, an infrastructure for them to play them online. And the influence of Warcraft doesn't stop at RTS, because from there we got MOBAs. You can draw a line from 1994's Warcraft all the way to 2024's Deadlock. The importance of Blizzard's games and their design is something that is felt almost every day in almost every game. The legacy of Diablo can obviously be felt, since it's still basically the way we describe ARPGs. They're Diablo-likes to a certain point. World of Warcraft is obviously the template for most MMOs since it came out, and depending on how you want to view it, nobody has surpassed World of Warcraft in what it did. People are so enamored by the unique, light years ahead of its time experience that World of Warcraft was, that people just wanted World of Warcraft Classic, and then they played it. But Blizzard's impact is not just that legacy, it's also a lot more recent legacy. 2013's Hearthstone catapulted the collectible card game format to digital in a way that hasn't been seen since. Except maybe now the Pokemon app. Although I wonder how many people play that game versus just opening packs for free every day. Bro, I gotta rate you. Flabebe. Golem. I got Golem. Hearthstone itself spawned so many different clones, trying to imitate exactly what it was doing. Some of them better than Hearthstone. Rest in peace, Legends of Runeterra. A lot of them just NFT crypto scams. But you can go watch Jom for that. I recommend Jom. Great channel. But I really do think that very often Hearthstone is kind of forgotten about, despite just how big that game was, and to a certain degree, still is. I will never forget. I was there. I was on Twitch when the most popular thing to spam in chat was Nax out. Nax out. For the first expansion. That was a great time. Of course, in 2016, they put out Overwatch. Now, there's a big debate on just how much Overwatch took from Team Fortress 2. I do really think that Overwatch set the template for what a modern hero shooter is, and most games that take elements of that, of unique character abilities and personalities on which to sell skins, that was taken from Overwatch, and until, like, right now, nobody had really imitated the specific design of Overwatch when it came to a class-based or hero-based shooter. However, the impact of Overwatch really can't be understated. Whether you want to consider the most influential parts of Overwatch the design of the combat loop itself or the hero idea, and whether you want to attribute that more to Team Fortress or not, the point is that blending heroes, blending specific characters with their own unique abilities and identities and personalities that you can attach yourself to, is largely a thing that Overwatch did. To the point that when we look at Valorant, we just say, oh, it's Counter-Strike plus Overwatch. And since those days, what we have gotten from Blizzard is World of Warcraft Classic, so that's, you know, a remaster in a sense. Diablo Immortal, Warcraft Rumble, that's what every Warcraft fan wanted. Diablo 4, I guess some people call it Diablo, and Overwatch 2, which is not, it's not Overwatch, it's not the sequel, it's the same game, but you know, it's got a 2 in front of it, and now it's worse. What went wrong here? Well, actually, a lot of stuff. Anyways, with this intro out of the way, I've decided to divide the situation at Blizzard and the games that are picking up the slack into 3 different chapters: greed, failure to innovate, and regression. And while for the sake of keeping this video nice and tidy, I'm going to make each one of those about a specific game, you're going to see all 3 elements present in all 3 of the examples that we're going to look at. And we are starting with greed. Oh, look, Philip, he's doing the Majora's Mask thing. I don't think he's ever done that before. No, Steve, I think nobody has ever done it before. We better subscribe. Now, greed is a rampant problem within the games industry. An extra special thanks to Sven Vink for their wonderful speech at the Game Awards, by the way. But it's just true. The chase for profit from shareholders, the way that directives need to please those shareholders, and the way that employees who probably just want to make a great game are forced to adhere to standards that are just inhuman in order to make subpar products, but that hopefully make the most money, is something that has been destroying a lot of the upper echelons, the AAA, the big corporations within gaming for a while now, and that has led most of that sector astray. What I find incredibly confusing about Activision, Blizzard, King, Xbox, whatever, is just how different some of their examples of greed are, and how different they are compared to other games and to each other. Let me explain. Call of Duty is still one of the largest video games on the planet. It is expensive. It's one of the few games actually pushing not the $70 mark, but the $80 mark. However, I play Call of Duty every year, and especially this year that it's on Game Pass, it's even easier for me. Now, Call of Duty might be an incredibly expensive game that also sells dozens upon hundreds of terrible microtransactions and makes absurd amounts of money every year. Kick back and relax. The days are about to be the dankest with the Tracer Pack Dank Days Mastercraft Ultra Skin Bundle in Call of Duty Black Ops 6 Warzone. But the truth is, I find it hard to argue that Call of Duty doesn't offer enough value for the price of admission. If you're into these sorts of games, there's really nothing like Call of Duty on the market, but despite that, it does come with a ton of content, and the important content over time is completely free after that purchase. Now, I'm not defending the business model, because look at this stuff. It's horrible. And it is predatory in the sense that you get those terrible pop-ups and who knows what sort of things they do in the back end to promote you spending money. But it's never dangling actual gameplay features in front of you. It's not asking you to pay extra money to get the newest zombies maps, something that years before, when we didn't have microtransactions, we had to do. We actually paid for those expansions. Now, Call of Duty is technically part of Activision Blizzard King. These guys are all under the same umbrella to one degree or another, and money is the most important part of everything, so I have to ask, why does Blizzard do it worse? And this is why we needed to start with Call of Duty, because it's considered by many the worst example of monetization in the business, but Diablo, under the same umbrella, is much worse. It's a game where the content at launch was lacking, it's a game that is filled with microtransactions, some of them bordering pay to convenience at times, and that on top of that, when it does have important content drops, like an expansion with a whole new class, it asks people to pay for that expansion. The point of contrast here is that even what many people think is the worst is still better than what Blizzard is doing with Diablo 4, which is taking advantage of the fact that I guess ARPGs are a little bit more niche, so their fans deserve to be tortured. What do? Every single monetization tactic under the sun. You have to pay to play a game that came out basically incomplete in a Season 0 with a ton of problems and the promise that it would get better over time, but hey, you still had a season pass that you could buy along with a ton of microtransactions, some of them bordering on that pay to convenience. And then when you get an actual meaningful content drop, something like a new zombies chapter or new maps and new weapons in Call of Duty, well, in Diablo 4, you have to pay for it. $40. I mean, $40 if you're just kind of a fan. If you're a real fan, you'll buy the deluxe edition that comes with more cosmetics and a fast track for the new season pass for a game that's just mediocre. This is what happens when there is no competition. When Blizzard can say that their niche little game of Diablo only appeals to a small segment of customers, and they desperately need this money to keep their content mill rolling to maybe one day make the game good. Or, and hear me out for a second, you could play Path of Exile too. I already hear you in the comments, Mug, you're so facetious. You have to pay to play Path of Exile 2. That's not true. You have to pay to get early access to an incomplete game that is still in development, and that somehow, still in development, is still better than Diablo 4. I think that Path of Exile 2 is an incredible value proposition at the moment for $30 to experience it early. But this is a game that in about a year's time is going to be free and filled with over double the content, and that yes, it is limiting convenience-based things on money, but you play the game for free. If you really want to look at it this way, when Path of Exile 2 releases for free, it'll be the most incredible demo in the world for a video game, and for $30 to $40 you can buy all of the convenience-based things like your stash tabs. And then you'll get all of the updates, the leagues, everything that the game offers completely for free, sustained by people who buy the microtransactions, which might be you or might not be you, who knows. It is such a completely different business model to what Blizzard has done with Diablo, but what is the most interesting thing about it is that Path of Exile 2 is just better. It's just better. I think even in its very problem-ridden early access, to be fair, there's a lot of stuff to iron out. It does a better job of being appealing to a wider audience than Diablo 4. And it is appealing much more to the hardcore people who really like playing ARPGs than, say it with me, Diablo 4. Despite not having an open world to explore, Path of Exile 2 is more innovative in what it actually puts forward for the genre, and it does actually try something different successfully. So it doesn't really matter from which perspective you want to look at these two games, it's just clear that what Blizzard was once synonymous with is now passing hands to somebody else. Be that the greed in Path of Exile 2 is really difficult to complain about or throw in their face when they give you so much for, well, eventually the price of free. But when it comes to the overall design of the games, well, it's actually trying to take risks and do something new. Look at that. The thing that I find the most interesting about this whole thing is that Blizzard kind of fumbled a lot of stuff with Diablo 4. It once again tried to do the Blizzard thing of innovating and appealing to the hardcore players while at the same time making it more accessible for newer players. And that's not new. Blizzard has done that since forever. World of Warcraft was a more accessible MMO than most MMOs at the time. But Path of Exile 2, even in early access, and despite not having the best onboarding process, it's just much better than what is there in Path of Exile 1, has had tremendous success, even behind a paywall that it is currently, not because it's appealing to both crowds, but because it's unified under a singular vision of making a fantastic game that contains great content from start to finish. It is out-blizzarding Blizzard at the things that they used to do, because I'm very convinced that before, Blizzard didn't do them on purpose. They just kind of stumbled into it by making excellent games. I mean, if you don't believe me that Path of Exile 2 is taking Diablo 4's thunder, why are they letting people play it for free? Now, we'll come back to the idea of greed when we also return to the idea of regression. But now I want to segue that idea of innovation into chapter 2, which is that. It's the thing I just said. It's failure to innovate.
That was me. I did the sound effect this time.
The Bazaar. Oh yes, this is a project that maybe some of you who have been around for as long as I have remember. Except you don't remember the name, but you do remember the idea of it. Does Tempo Storm ring a bell? Yeah, Reynad, that one Hearthstone streamer. I remember him around 9 years ago saying that he was starting up his own game studio and that he wanted to do something akin to Hearthstone, but better. And the result of that is now here. It exists. It's another YouTuber/streamer game, but I think that this is the best one of them. The Bazaar very clearly takes a lot of inspiration from Hearthstone, and I don't think it's trying to hide that. I think it's very clear that it's wearing it on its sleeve. But it is a very different game, and just way more exciting. While Hearthstone has kind of fallen into just being Hearthstone and getting its updates, its new expansions, its new cards, and it did try something different with Battlegrounds, the results with it felt more like they were chasing a trend than trying to innovate. Now, the reasons why the Bazaar is so exciting is because it takes a path that a lot of other games have taken, including Hearthstone. Hearthstone's Battlegrounds were meant to compete with things like teamfight tactics, the rise of the auto-battler lobby. But the Bazaar took inspiration from the sealed runs that you would find in a game like Hearthstone, the arena runs, and transformed it into that same draft format, but a very different one. It actually invented a new type of draft format, one where instead of being locked in an arena with the same competitors at the same time and with time pressure, you get to make the decisions on your own and then experience them through asynchronous multiplayer. This means that while it shares a lot in common with Hearthstone when it comes to the overall design, a lot of the mechanics that are involved, and obviously the aesthetic, the Bazaar was actually the pioneer in a genre that was then overtaken by games that managed to come out before it, like Super Auto Pets or Backpack Battles. The most important thing is that it fundamentally captures the joy of an arena run, of immersing yourself into something like a collectible card game environment, but then fuses it with this sort of PvE adventure that's more reminiscent of something like Slay the Spire. It is a complicated game to explain, but one that you understand very quickly once you begin to play it, and it is, in my opinion, just brilliant. The stated intention of the game is for every single run to feel unique, like there's something completely different that happens, and your knowledge of the game and your ability to adapt your board to what's presented is what makes everything feel like a journey. A combination of PvE, PvP, and roguelite building, but all with this adventurous twist. However, I think that the most interesting part of the Bazaar is the parts that it steals from Blizzard. The world building, the characters, the little quips, and the effects that every card has very much mimic Hearthstone, but they do it like really, really well. Hearthstone had a ton of charm on its own, even if you didn't care about the lore behind it when it came to the Warcraft side of it. But that charm that was present in Hearthstone, from the different boards and arenas, from the clicking the boards around or the little quips that the characters would say, the iconic voice lines from that game, that's all been replicated in the Bazaar in its own very interesting original world. The Bazaar is a port town where people from across the galaxies come to trade, meaning that while having a certain aesthetic to it, they can play around and do whatever they want with robots and aliens and pirates and ninjas and whatever you can think of. But it's all very well made to still fit within the aesthetic of the game. All of the different merchants, enemies, NPCs, and some of the cards are just iconic at this point, despite the game really only being available to the public since late October. Because listen, I paint my ship red, and I don't use paint. You'll get it when you get it, okay? It's good. It's good. The Bazaar is one of my top games of this very incredible year, similarly to Path of Exile 2 and Marvel Rivals. And while it hasn't had as much attention placed on it, probably because it requires the Tempo launcher and it has no plans of coming to Steam, please, at Reynad, reconsider. But let me say this, and I don't take it lightly, it is actually worth creating an account and downloading a different unique proprietary launcher to Tempo Storm to play the Bazaar. It's that good. Just don't bank on that, please, man. And while I just have so many great things to say about the Bazaar overall, I do want to highlight that its hero design is just on point. Currently in the game, there's 3 heroes, with new ones coming very soon. We already know a lot about the 3 next heroes coming into the game. They have a lot of their items already in it. But new heroes are intended to be added into the game every 3 months, and heroes are a massive experience in themselves. Learning the ins and outs of them and how they can interact is something that you're at least going to need to spend 15 to 20 hours on each of them just to really come to grips with them. And they're all different, charming, and worth learning all of their different item sets. And the Bazaar is of course free to play and has a system that's very similar to Hearthstone. You get one hero for free, and then from there, you have to pay for the other ones with in-game currency, but you can also earn that currency. If you play ranked, you get different chests depending on how many victories you achieve in your run, and when you open those chests, you get cosmetics and also gems. New heroes are going to cost 2,500 gems or $25. But in my experience, getting 10 wins in ranked will get you anywhere between 150 to 200 gems. You get one ranked run for free every day, and then you can obtain tickets to play more ranked by either paying with gems or by playing the normal free play version. And if you get 10 wins in free play, you get a ranked ticket. And of course, if you're excellent at ranked, it is once again self-sustaining. You will earn more gems than what it costs to get a ranked ticket. The cosmetics that you get are also pretty cool. There's a ton of different skins for the characters, there's different boards that you can unlock, rugs, hardbacks, and the foil or immersive versions of each item, making each of them just look a little bit cooler. There's tons of strategy, complexity, and a meta that right now might not be the best, but it's still just a ton of fun. The willingness that the Bazaar has to take something from the card genre, specifically Hearthstone in its charm, its design, and its overall influences, and then double down on a very specific part of it and transform everything else is just a really smart idea that, honestly, just creates a final product that is incredible. It's the sort of innovation, world building, and charm that I would expect Blizzard to continue pumping out, but it doesn't. It just supports Hearthstone and its battlegrounds. And just in case it's not clear where the Blizzard inspirations come from, think that at the very minimum, it's worth mentioning that the Bazaar is a product of fans of Blizzard, fans of Hearthstone, taking Destiny into their own hands and saying, we're going to make our own game, and we hopefully want to make it better than the one that inspired us. There is a very similar itch from Hearthstone that is scratched by the Bazaar, and I think that's shown by just how many people who come from Hearthstone are now playing the Bazaar. Shoutouts to Kriparian. And I am incredibly happy that this is the sort of evolution that comes from people being inspired by Blizzard's game. The Bazaar is honestly a type of strategy game that is unparalleled at the moment, in my opinion, that blends so many things together, and it's just impressive. And I could not be more excited for the future of it, for the upcoming heroes, upcoming cards, upcoming mechanics, all sorts of things that you can experience early next year. And it feels so good to be just excited about a video game in this way. But I do have some reservations. I will talk about the Bazaar again, trust me, because I cannot break my addiction to it. Also, Reynad, if you want to talk, I don't know, man, like, leave a comment. But when Blizzard isn't failing to innovate on formats that they themselves popularized, they are actively regressing. Overwatch 2 is in many ways a disaster that really only has managed to survive because it is Overwatch 2. A game that hasn't really had competition except Paladins. No shade to Paladins, pretty fun game, had some really cool ideas in it, but, you know, it wasn't Overwatch. I don't think it's a stretch to say that most people were unhappy with Overwatch 2. The changes to 5v5, the changes to the monetization system, the changes to free-to-play and how that locked people out of heroes until they decided to revert that. I don't know how they ever thought it was a good idea for that to happen. I don't think anybody liked it. I think that the only reason that people still played Overwatch 2 is mostly because they wanted to play Overwatch, and having the game have support once again, this big relaunch of it, gave everybody a reason to hop back in. And despite it being in many ways an inferior version of such a tentpole game, people tolerated it because what was there was still excellent. It turns out that a worse version of Overwatch, but that receives active support, is still better than a lot of other games. So despite the downward trend that Overwatch had been on for such a long time, so many different decisions, from GOATs to role queue to Overwatch's competitive scene to them abandoning the game in order to develop the PvE version to then abandon the PvE version and release Overwatch 2 all the way to today, where we're unsure if the game will now just move back to 6v6, none of that tarnished that under it all, Overwatch is excellent, brilliantly optimized, incredibly fun, and just overall a great game that has had so much impact over the years and on the industry. So much so that even that regression of it, a worse version, is still better than most things. Some people might say that what I'm saying isn't fair, that Overwatch has evolved quite a lot, and that is true. If you played 2016 Overwatch today, it would feel strange and clunky, and just a lot of the game feel and design of Overwatch has evolved for the better over time, but a lot of it has also become worse. If there's any indication of that, it's the fact that we are now testing 6v6. We are now finding out if the radical decision that justified the existence of Overwatch 2 has to be undone because actually the game is worse. If the whole idea behind Overwatch 2's existence is now being undone, how is that not regression in their design? Two things can be true. They can be making the game better to play in certain ways while still regressing in a lot of other aspects year over year. Which is why I find the sly little smile with which NetEase announced that all of their heroes would be free forever because they're the most important part of the game. Twisted in there. Now, the saga with NetEase is incredibly interesting because Blizzard had a deal with NetEase since it became Activision Blizzard, since 2008. they had been working hand in hand with NetEase to make sure that their games could exist in China. So when I say that NetEase has been intimately familiar with everything that Blizzard has done for many years, that's not an exaggeration. They were there since the start. They were very probably some of the first playtesters for games like Overwatch to make sure that they would fit in with the Chinese audience and what they would need to do in order to publish the game there. So the fact that NetEase stood up and said, hey, we normally only publish games, but we're going to develop our own and we're just going to make Overwatch, is what makes Marvel Rivals so interesting. Now you can check out my full review of Marvel Rivals if you want me to go in depth on some of the more interesting things that I think they are innovating on. Some of the refinements to a lot of the design of these heroes and these ideas and how they put it all together to try and push the hero shooter genre, the very specific Overwatch sub-genre of hero shooters, despite Overwatch kind of, again, popularizing the entire concept forward. Because I do think they're doing some excellent stuff that maybe a lot of people aren't appreciating right now, and it is more different to Overwatch in good ways than you might assume. But it doesn't change the fact that a lot of Marvel Rivals' success is that they are simply not doing the things that Overwatch 2 did. They are not making the game 5v5. They are not putting competitive balance as their #1 priority. They are not limiting the heroes that you can play. And they are not looking to abandon the game or to promise things and then not deliver. It is incredible to see a company like Blizzard have not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 or 5 gold mines in their hands, under their ownership. They're just like holding the deed and just setting them on fire. And if Blizzard is ever going to be what it was once again, the entire company needs to refocus on what they do and where their value is. Because I don't think it's in how much money they can make. That money is running out because every day we're seeing better and better competitors willing to pick up their slack. The most impressive part about Overwatch 2 and Marvel Rivals is just how much work Overwatch 2 put in. So much of Marvel Rivals' success is not just that it's an excellent game in its own right, it's that Overwatch 2 did everything possible to put itself in a losing position. Sometimes Luigi wins by doing nothing, you know? I mean, that's not fair. Again, Marvel Rivals is an excellent game, but it helped. And I've said it before that my favorite part about Marvel Rivals is how it feels like Overwatch of an alternate dimension. One where every single decision that we saw Overwatch 2 make, every decision that was controversial or led to community revolts, didn't happen, and instead the game just stayed as it was at launch and evolved in this other timeline and just popped out in 2024 up to the standards of today. There are fundamental design decisions in Marvel Rivals that aren't innovative, they're just the same decisions on which Overwatch was built. On power fantasy, on making characters feel impactful, on making the moments flashy and fun for everybody involved, on just having that chaotic experience feel good to play, instead of something focused on competitive integrity and matchmaking cues and whatever the pros say. But to me, that just reinforces the problems with Blizzard. A lot of us fans of their games are just desperate for the next game that's trying to take them on. Any new ARPG, people will devour. Any competitor to Overwatch, people will try out. And that's because for such a long time, Blizzard has seemed to have a stranglehold on its corners of the market, and to see them challenged proves that people just want a better version, that better versions exist, and they don't make them because they're just too comfortable. And that's not me saying that, that's the games. That's looking at the player base for Path of Exile 2 in early access behind a paywall, staying so healthy weeks and weeks after its release. That's seeing Marvel Rivals continue to sustain its player base week after week. That's looking at the Bazaar, which while we don't have the player numbers, I hope that it keeps growing because it's just a great game. These projects, long in development, are now arriving to take on Blizzard's reign. And much like we're seeing across the entire industry, they are challenging those who hold the throne. And it seems like the kings that hold it just can't wield their swords anymore. Blizzard Entertainment is an incredible game company with an enormous legacy. One that has a lot of stains on it, admittedly, but its contributions to the world of video games cannot be understated. But if they don't change pretty much yesterday, they're just going to be remembered as a company that gave so much to the world of video games. They're going to be remembered for that legacy instead of being constantly celebrated for the way that they grow it. Some of the biggest contributions that Blizzard has made are happening now, and it is the existence of these competitors. It is the fact that Path of Exile probably wouldn't exist without Diablo, and Path of Exile 2 wouldn't exist without it either. It's the fact that Marvel Rivals wouldn't exist without Overwatch, and the Bazaar wouldn't exist without Hearthstone. But I just find it very sad that a company that, through iteration or through complete creative thought, was capable of innovating within the industry so much, of creating such incredible experiences, and is now relegated to something that other people are doing better. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm happy. I'm incredibly happy to celebrate just how many great games we get to play and how we can draw those lines of influence from Blizzard. But I would be much happier if Blizzard felt the pressure of so much of what they've done, having new crown holders today and taking their 13,000 employees and making something better. I don't know if I can ever look at Blizzard in the same way that I did back in 2010. This blind faith that it really didn't matter what Blizzard did. They were kind of the only company that had this Nintendo polish to them. It was them and Nintendo. It didn't matter what Blizzard did. It was going to be of excellent quality. Yes, I did play Heroes of the Storm, and it's still good, okay? And from that throne, oh, how the mighty have fallen. So if you made it all the way to the end of this video, I can assume you decided to stay a while and listen. I hope that you look at Blizzard and you're thankful for everything that they've done. Because while we can place our bets on if they'll come back or they won't, what they've done is still amazing, and it's brought us to the amazing games we have today. But I also hope that this video really shines a light on some of the places where they've went wrong. That uncontrollable greed when they have so much competition. That failure to innovate, even with the properties that they already have, because no, Warcraft Rumble is not good. And how they have actively tried to tank their own games with things like Overwatch 2. But I also hope that you got to celebrate some really good games that exist today that are probably only going to get better as time goes on. We're just witnessing their arrival, and games that we can be excited for, that we can deposit all of that hope of what Blizzard would have done to them, and that now we all get to enjoy. If you're an Overwatch fan and you haven't played Marvel Rivals, go play it. If you're a fan of Diablo and you haven't played Path of Exile 2, well, you can pay for the early access or just be excited for it when it comes out. And if you like Hearthstone and roguelites and auto battlers, go watch some videos of the Bazaar because it's complicated, and hey, you can also start playing today or just wait for that to also be free next year. But you can be excited for these games and hopefully enjoy them. I hope that the positivity that I want to inspire in the video game community and the celebration of just how awesome video games are comes across in my videos. I love games so damn much. So excuse me, I have to go to my daily ranked run, the Bazaar. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. It helps out a ton. If you want more from me, including industry news, essays like this one, reviews of current games, and retrospectives on old ones, subscribe. That would make me very happy, and hopefully it will make you happy in the future when you get to enjoy great videos that at least I try to. And there is, of course, a large group of people that support what I do directly. The members of the $1 Patreon wall, the Cup Burglars, are up on the wall, and you can join them too for just $1 on Patreon. That's the only tier available. It's a great community that I am eternally grateful for. Go ahead, leave a comment below, tell me your favorite Blizzard game memory, tell me what you like about some of these new games. I read all the comments, it's always a joy to read through them, and as always, go out there, enjoy some great games, and I'll see you again very soon.